Hi, my name is Tom Ollerton. This is the Shiny New Object podcast. This podcast is my exploration into marketing technology to understand what are the latest and greatest platforms and tools and bits of tech that brands and their agencies can use. And instead of me trying to be the smart ass working out how it all works, what I do is invite on cool, intelligent, interesting guests who are, to be honest, mostly my friends or people I've known for a while. And today we've got Craig Hepburn, who was, until recently, the Global Vice President of Digital Brand and Creative Services at TATA Communications. And it amazes me that you've managed to have any kind of career, because I only ever saw you at conferences. And I was completely, obviously, winging it like anyone else. But I was like, how's this guy managed to have all these really impressive jobs? But yet he's at every conference that I'm at, and I'm not doing really impressive jobs. And so before TATA, you were at Nokia, Microsoft?
Microsoft prior to that, through the acquisition of Nokia's phone business. So.
And how did you end up there?
At Nokia or Microsoft?
Wow. For people who may not have come across you before, who are listening to the podcast, what's been your kind of journey up until the height, which is the Shiny New Object podcast?
Well, it's been quite it's been an interesting journey. I think we were chatting earlier, I was like, you never know where your career is going to go. You always have those kind of sliding door moments. Background really was not from a traditional marketing space at all. It was actually more from kind of technology, web, the internet, the sort of rise of back when sort of Netscape and I started playing around with sort of web technology and Dreamweaver. And
do you remember the first thing you searched for on a search engine?
Oh, that'd be a great one.
Because
it was probably, what would I have searched for?
My thing was, I was at York Uni and we had like an internet room.
What was your browser you used?
I've no idea, man. But I remember I typed into the. I don't know. I typed into the. I don't know what you call it now. Like, you know, the
bar,
the URL, the bar, and I typed in, and this is gonna date me and make me realise how desperately uncool I am. But I typed in cooler shaker. Had it been Chrome would have worked it out. But back in the day, just gave me some 404, and I went, the internet shit, and that was it, and I didn't touch it again for like 5 years or something.
Well, that takes me back. Actually, I was working at the Daily Record, which was a Scottish national newspaper. Had huge circulation back in the day, but I was actually working there as a copy boy, which was more like a runner.
Copy boy.
That's what they were called. So you would basically run around the editorial. You'd sit in the editorial floor, and they would say copy, and you would run over to whoever would shout, and they would ask you to go and get some material, go and get some cuttings or clippings or newspapers or whatever errand they asked you to do. You'd run around and do it. And so they introduced these Apple Mac computers that they just introduced.
What years is that? Would be
this was
2000?
This was before that, 1996, 95.
Right, okay.
And I remember sitting one night, I was on a late shift, and this guy invited me over and showed me this browser, this thing called Mosaic. Remember, do you know Mosaic? So Mosaic was the very first it was the very first user sort of GUID, a sort of graphic user interface that allowed you to get access to the internet without having to type code. So it was an actual, and there was, I remember the little screen. It would take about 5 minutes to start up the browser. And then everything would be like, it'd be slow. It'd be like working in slow motion.
Yeah.
But you'd sit there and then you would bring up web pages and you'd see it slowly loading line by line. But anyway, that was my first experience. But working in newspapers back then and getting involved in Apple Macs technology, playing with Photoshop, Dreamweaver. And so that gave me a kind of real appetite back then for, I think, more like creative technology, how to create things in, online and build web posters and build websites.
Was that your dream though? Like as a young lad, you must have been in your late teens. I guess.
Yes, I was 16,
we're the
17.
Same age.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So were you like, I really want to get into building web portals and pages, or what was your?
I didn't really know at that point, but that was the thing when I remember sitting there in front of this kind of amazing machine, this Apple Macintosh computer that I'd never really had before, because we used to always have BBC computers and all those rubbish things. So sitting in front of this like graphic user interface and being able to kind of create something with software and then being able to publish it, or at the time I was doing things like printing posters and doing flyers for friends. So I was doing graphics, and so I was doing a bit of print and a bit of digital. And the idea of being able to create something that quickly, that for me was like at high quality, and print them off and I just found it amazing. Like, because before that, I mean, to achieve or to build or to create something like that was quite a complex process.
It's a lot of work. I remember I was years ago, I was at an event, and did you have a skateboard?
Yeah.
Do you remember Rad magazine?
Totally do, yeah. Yeah.
We're going back. And I met the founder, or the guy who set it up.
No way.
Really old guy, like way older than you think. We're chatting on about different technology and stuff, and he said that on the back of Rad magazine they had an email address,
right?
And this was in 1985.
Wow.
And it was like, email address was like 21446 what, like, I'm assuming it must have been something in it, whatever. Yeah. And had they had one email in 10 years.
No way. Oh, how times have changed.
How times have changed.
But yeah, so working in newspapers, got the love for working with computers and specifically Macs and desktop publishing, and that gave me a sort of real appetite, and hence playing with Mosaic and then building with Adobe Dreamweaver. I think it was Adobe back then, it was Macromedia. I remember playing around with Director. There was a product called Quark Express. So anyone on here, back from the desktop publishing days, Quark Express, it was like a £1,000 piece of software, £1,000 for this sort of drag and drop desktop publishing. That's what all newspapers, all print, all magazines were designed in Quark Express back then. And I just loved being able to I used to sit and create my own sort of made up front page newspapers for my friends for parties and stuff like that, and it was like a party trick. They all loved it, and I'd take it around to the house.
What would you put in it?
Probably not repeatable.
Not repeatable. Okay, that's it.
But you get the point.
19-year-old lad from Scotland gets let loose on digital publishing, right? And so then what happened next?
All right, so obviously, so I got a sort of, that gave me actually a view of, my dad wanted me to get into newspapers and journalism.
And was that his background?
Yeah, so he was more photography, so he used to run the darkroom, pictures, image photography. He worked there, he got me the job there. He was very well respected and liked the newspaper, so bringing in me to kind of be a copy boy, it was like my first job. And he'd always had ambitions, son, best job in the world, journalism, be a journalist, being able to have been able to communicate, being able to kind of the power to kind of put messages across and use journalism as that kind of vehicle. And I totally understood where he was coming from. The problem is, working in newspapers, you soon get an appetite for, like, and I don't want to be disrespectful, journalists, there's amazing journalists out there, but some newspaper journalists, you're like, I don't know really if that's what's going to drive me. In terms of just how they approach things and how hack journalism was back then, and I suppose still is in some cases now. And
for just to give a bit of context to the listener, the Daily Record, how would you? Is it Daily Record?
Yeah, Daily Record. Yeah, still
in the UK standard, what is that like? The equivalent newspaper?
All right, so it's the equivalent of like the Sun.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have the Scottish Sun as well, but it's like a daily national newspaper. Okay. Yeah, so it's probably like that. The Daily Mirror. The Daily Mirror is so it's the English equivalent of the Daily Record, and owned by the same Trinity Media.
And so the Daily Record wasn't satisfying your soul at that point.
No, it was just more of the journalistic side of it, like journalism in the traditional sense. Okay. But actually, what I did get excited about was the fact that you could, when I seen how multimedia, how web, and how digital technology. Probably blogging didn't even exist back then, but the idea of being able to use technology to push it, to create content, to be able to distribute information, I seen there was something there. I mean, originally it was CD-ROMs, and so actually when I was looking at going to uni, I started looking at courses, and the one that popped out was multimedia technology, and that actually was probably, I think it was the first year they'd run it at Caledonian University, and it was all about.
Is that Edinburgh?
No, Glasgow, Cali. Come on.
Probably fun.
Come on.
Like shit.
Come on.
Sorry. Okay, so you didn't.
We're going to have a fight in this podcast, Tom.
Come on. I'm from Northumberland, man. Come on. Close, but not that close.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back then it was. I definitely seen something early, and I suppose throughout my career I've always had that. I don't know. You have that sixth sense for like, this is exciting. I'm not really sure where it's going to go, but I know it's going to be exciting. And it kind of really appealed to me more than traditional journalistic kind of education. And so therefore, I mean, in journalism, I remember one of my friends was a journalist, and he had to learn shorthand.
Yeah, of course,
like, yeah. I remember him showing me it, and it just put me right off. I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that in a million years. So anyway, that really approached me to that. And the funny story was, I told my dad I was doing journalism. I told him, yeah, Dad, I'm in media. And he kept seeing these things, media, multimedia. I was like, doing multiple versions of media? Yeah, Dad. I have no clue that at the end that when I graduated, asked me what newspaper I was going to be a journalist at. And actually I said I was going to set up my own web design company. And funnily enough, he thought, that's a great idea, son. I heard that's the next big thing. But yeah, so it was kind of that really got me into sort of and it was funny though at uni when they actually set up the CD-ROM, it was kind of the moment where, you know, uni's always like the curriculum's like a year or two behind, right? So we're all sitting there going, why are we building CD-ROMs and we should be just publishing this straight to like, you know, a web page. And so we, even during that year, had to kind of change our own curriculum to push the boundaries of outdated.
And how did I respond to that?
Actually, to be fair, they were really good about it. I mean, we still had to do the curriculum. You had to finish it, but you know, we kind of we took most of our content at the end of it and pushed it into the web as well as websites.
And what was your content back then?
So I done an interactive CD-ROM and website on The Godfather.
What? Yeah. Talk me through the user experience for that.
It's amazing.
Sound, lots of sound.
I used, there was a 3D package, I can't even remember. Anyway, I remember drawing the Godfather logo, right? You remember it with the little puppet strings?
Yeah.
And I cut it round,
see it now.
and I created it took me, honestly, it must have taken me days on my Mac to create this 3D, what do you call it when you do a 3D render? So to create this 3D Godfather render, and I made it like gold, and it changed colour, and it spun on its axis.
And this was your own version of that graphic?
Yeah, I copied the logo and then I put it into a computer, created a 3D version, and then created like an animated one, and it sat at the top corner of my little logo, and then you could click in. We used there was a product called Macromedia Director, and you created your own kind of like interactive CD-ROM. You're getting me all excited. I think find that.
I had no idea. I had no idea this chat was going to go in this direction, but I'm going to go deeper. Okay. Right, what was the purpose of the website? What was the ROI?
Well, it was okay. The ROI was to create deeper engagement with fans in The Godfather. It was to find out more about the characters. So I took all the best characters, and you could find out profiles, backgrounds, little snippets from the movie.
An audio file you could.
It was an audio file.
This is a pretty sophisticated website, man.
It was. I mean, I've actually got it in my I've got an old Mac laptop, and I tried to boot it up about.
You should re-release this as an iPhone app.
Well, I tried to contact Paramount at the time because I thought they could take this and add it to the DVDs or what VHS videos they were selling at the time.
Right.
I was like, put this on as an additional feature. I never heard back from them. I was gutted. Absolutely devastated.
So, oh my god, I had literally no idea. Right, so you did an interactive CD-ROM and probably what was referred to as an online website.
Well, it was a Flash website. Like
Flash was right. I
remember Flash.
And and what year was this? This was like
Shockwave. It was called. This was 2000. Year
2000, and you're still in Scotland at this point.
I'm in Glasgow. Yeah.
So what was the next step? Did this Godfather work get spotted by some killer brand and thought this guy's the future? Like, what happened?
Well, funny you should say that, Tom. No.
Shit.
Actually, it's a combination of. I was applying for, literally hundreds of jobs in Glasgow and Scotland, and I couldn't find anybody hiring anyone in the world of CD-ROM development or technology or websites. Surprisingly enough. I then set up my own little business and started working with some friends who ran financial companies or different little businesses in Glasgow, and everybody at that point wanted a website. I remember it was the cool thing, right? When all these sort of businessmen are playing golf, like, have you got a website? No, I don't know a website.
Really?
You need a website. And nobody really knew why they needed a website.
Social status thing. Right?
It was a social status thing. And so I just managed to get some work doing that and helping people setting up their websites using, I think we had a product, so it was
So you were an agency, essentially?
Yeah, it was kind of, so I was, what age was it, 20, 21? Yeah, so set up, essentially a little digital design agency doing websites. But funnily enough, doing the sites was actually quite hard. It was like, because you can imagine a client back then who has no clue what a website is, trying to explain what they need. And
not necessarily that different, but anyway,
it's funny actually, right? Well, 18 years later, it's probably not changed. But it was even worse back then. But where we did start, where I started making a bit more money, was more on the side of people needed it updated. And so back then, there wasn't really content management systems as such, so I used to have to manually update web pages and stuff. So I'd get paid like retainers and to update their web pages. And that's kind of where a bit of money came in and sort of paid the bills. And then I also met a girl who was from the southeast, and she was up in Glasgow at the time. And so a combination of meeting her, she was moving back to the southeast, couldn't get a job up there. Everyone was telling me Brighton, the southeast, was a big place that the .com was going on. It was kind of the .com bubble back then or whatever. And so I just moved down to Brighton, or sort of Crawley, Brighton, different areas. I lived around that area and around the southeast.
And so how did you get a foothold in the actually, so this was like 2000-ish, right?
This was 2000, 2000.
Because I moved down to London in 1997, right?
A few years earlier,
yeah. And as a
so what age were you, 17, 18?
I was 19 when we moved down. Yeah, so I was on a very different tip, FYI. But I really struggled when I was first here culturally, because when you're from the northeast or Scotland, obviously two different things.
Yeah, totally.
So I was down here doing music, different story. I just want to be in a band, and that was difficult enough. So, what was it like as a young Scottish lad who's come down, fallen in love with this person, presumably, and trying to get a foothold in the industry? Like, how did you do that?
I mean, I suppose it was easier than coming down on my own and having nobody and didn't know anything.
You had somewhere to stay.
I had somewhere to stay.
Which is a big bonus.
At the time, her mum and dad were Scottish, and I got on well with them, and they were very supportive, and so they were like, you've got what you need to kind of like live here. But just start applying for jobs. And so at the time I was still doing a little bit of my own thing, trying to set up, but it was quite challenging. So I just started applying for loads of jobs. And even then there wasn't a lot, and it was getting to that end. I suppose this would be 2001.
And what jobs were you applying for? Like,
it was things like
brands and stuff?
It was, like there was a lot of intranet producers, web developer, web designers, web producers. There was a lot of jobs around coding, and one of the things that I was struggling with is everyone wanted tech and code, and I was more on the creative sort of front end design, more of the graphic creative side. But it was random jobs. It was like CD-ROM. There was kind of production. It was creative production. There was a lot of kind of that kind of stuff going on at the time. There wasn't a lot, I'd say, but there was some jobs. And
what I can't work out is how you got from there to where we met were you not here when we met? Yeah, like what were the big steps that you took?
So from there very quickly managed to get a great job actually, on Rent-A-Kill Initial. Did you ever Rent-A-Kill Initial? As in the best pest control business. Right. So pest control. Not realising they advertised the job. It was like something. It was like, I think it was £16,000 a year. It was to be.
That's big money.
Yeah, back then. Yeah. And it was basically a web producer. And
for Rent-A-Kill.
For Rent-A-Kill, based in East Grinstead. Yeah. And
it gets better and better.
Yeah, that's true. And I still loved that job. I was the very first guy hired. Sorry. Well, actually, no, I think it was a second, because it was my boss pulled on again. So I was hired to go in and basically build. It was actually an intranet, so we were creating the website, but also building all these intranet sites, which were essentially, kind of an internal version of their kind of their web experience. And there was a guy called Peter Main. I remember him to this day. Amazing guy. He was kind of a mentor back then. He had a really big vision of where everything was moving in terms of online technology, digital, and he built this kind of amazing team over a period of. I was there for I think 4 years, think it's still the longest job I had. He built a big team of tech, coders, creatives, and we built technology, we built server infrastructure, websites, intranets for all of the different brands, and it was actually where we built our own content management system. So it was a really good journey, and I was kind of there 4 years. I then was able to sort of, at that point you sort of want to go forward. I went off and worked for BAA for a couple of years, building their whole intranet technology using a product called Vignette. I'm sure people in the podcast will remember Vignette. A big, robust, which actually comes to full circle in a minute, because actually working with Vignette, rolling out that, which was quite a, to be honest, a ball ache. That was a ridiculous platform trying to implement that. And then moved on to a company called, which was a random thing. I was kind of getting fed up at BA, and I was thinking, this is not where I want to be, this is not what I want to do. And one day I woke up with a hangover, and I had a job interview for a company called STA Travel, and I woke up
STA
Travel,
right, okay,
and so I woke up one morning. My wife said, "Do you want to? Are you going for that?" Well, at the time, this is a new girlfriend, now wife, now, but she was like, "You need to get up and go for this interview," and I was I was kind of contemplating not going, but I did go along. I thought it was the worst interview I'd ever had, and they offered me the job, which was basically, the job role was global webmaster.
Classic job title of the age.
I think I've still got it on LinkedIn. So it was to basically essentially run or help them implement their whole global infrastructure as a part project with IBM, build a booking engine, global content management system. But essentially, Tom, it was a job that was huge. It was too big. It was scary. I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, obviously I understood the core basis of what they were trying to do, but it was massive. And they sort of turned around at one point, I think, and said, "We hired you because you were the only person that applied for the job that wasn't a coder."
Wow, thanks guys, cheers for that. So that's really interesting. And with a lot of other guests, they've always talked about this one job that was a bit too big for them. So what did you what did you learn from that job that helped you later down the line?
I mean, gosh, loads. I think the first thing is obviously, you're more capable than you ever think you are, right? I think most people have, secret anxiety and inhibitions within themselves, but I think the essence, if you understand the industry, you understand the technology, obviously you'd heard the background I came from, what they were doing was not really much different from the core of what I'd done. It was just on a much grander scale, a much bigger scale. So obviously knowing the core foundations, but I think the biggest thing was just learning to learn, actually working with an amazing outfit, IBM, the head of innovation at IBM out in Hamburg, working with them, learning from them, being able to kind of understand the role itself, and actually building relationships. I think at the time, it was the moment where I realised you really need to build relationships on a whole number of different levels, both at senior level, junior level, also, funnily enough, internationally, so working across Germans, Swiss, I think Austrians, I was working with Australians, Americans. It's the first global role I really had where I had to work with a whole range of different... it was kind of the role where I think I really felt like I thrived in terms of working globally and building those relationships.
And where did you... And so you can't have been there for very long, given you've never worked anywhere for more than 4 years, so...
That was 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And after SDA was...
And so from there, interesting, we implemented a content management platform there called Red Dot, which was the core underlying technology that we rolled out across STA. At the time, their head of the CEO at the time was they were kind of amazed at what we'd achieved with their platform. And I spoke at many of their events. They asked me to keynote and talk about the innovation we'd done, what we'd rolled out, and it became quite a... I didn't realise at the time what we'd achieved, but it was quite a big industry event. It was like TUI and other big travel technology companies followed what we'd done, not just in terms of the technology, but how we went about it with social media, Web 2.0. So the story became quite well known in the internet world. I was speaking, I think we were called out by Brent Hoberman at lastminute.com as being really innovative. So what we had achieved there, so therefore Red Dot and OpenText, who were the kind of parent company, thought that was quite exciting and approached me to come and speak to them about how could I tell that story to their other customers. So I'd never worked sort of B2B or kind of or sort of tech side, so it was quite interesting to go and work at sort of Red Dot OpenText for a few years and learn more about the sort of technology side, the product side.
So how did you get into brand? Because I think of you completely as a brand guy, brand digital evangelist, doer. So how, like, this is so surprising to me, because this is all very, very technical. Whereas we were chatting downstairs, catching up, and you were talking about the things you've been most proud of are the creative things, are the work you did with the projection mapping on Millbank Tower.
Yeah, Millbank Tower.
That is a long way away from this. So like, what happened? What were the let's just cover off the main steps.
Yeah, so I think when I went to OpenText, the whole premise really was getting much more exposure to brands. So therefore I was now right out in front of some of the world's largest brands, speaking to them, and it kind of took me out of that, as you said, that technical kind of back end kind of area into the forefront. And if you imagine these sales guys are like, go out, speak to these incredible brands, talk about what technology can achieve. It allowed me to sort of take that learning of the technology and sit in front of CMOs, which I hadn't really done, done a huge amount of before, in front of a whole varied amount of brands, and talk to them about what technology can do. And so you can imagine in my head, I'm thinking, well, this is pretty obvious, but it turned out that people weren't thinking this way. It was new. It was interesting, and so we, my team, we were able to sit there and have these conversations. And so what then happened is it exposed me, I suppose, to the opportunity to get in front of a lot of brands, talk about what the potential was, and from there, essentially, that's where I kind of got a headhunter calling me up about the Nokia gig, which was they were looking to sort of, how could they look at transforming their business in terms of digital. They knew they were going through some tough challenges. They wanted to really, fast track their digital kind of onboarding. And again, got headhunted in to kind of go and work there.
So we'll just pause on Nokia.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that, because obviously
Sure.
there's a lot to tell there. So this is the Shiny New Object podcast, obviously, and it's so interesting that you've been selling up to this point in the story shiny new objects all the way through, whether that's interactive CD-ROMs, whatever. And I think it's so interesting that you got and put in front of these chief marketing officers. So what has anything changed when it comes to selling new technology to marketing people, or is it the same as it ever was?
It's a great point. I think it depends. I think it depends who you're speaking to. I mean, and what I mean by that is, so if I think about some of the experiences I had when, sitting in front of Sony and I think Motorola, BlackBerry actually was somebody we were sitting in front of many times. They were a big customer. It was sometimes, it was the obvious things that, well, to me, the things that were obvious that they weren't doing, that they couldn't see. And that also, I suppose it takes a bit of age, as you get a bit older and wiser, you start to realise, hang on, not everyone's seen the world and seeing things in the same way as you do, right? Yeah. So I think there's a bit of naivety. I was like, well, this is obvious, why is no one doing this? And you realise that not everyone is thinking about using technology, using things like search engines, using Google, using things like Facebook was kind of new at the time, and it was just, for me, very obvious, why wouldn't you harness these tools to kind of help your brand? But people just weren't really thinking about it, and so I think certain people are open to those ideas, and you can sit there, and I've had great conversations with excellent, senior leadership who are totally open to the idea of new things, new shiny things, and they want them, and they embrace them, not just to satisfy kind of that conversation, but they actually follow up the action that they want to come and speak to. They want to go and try things.
And you think that's a person, not a job title? Do you think that is a mindset?
It's a mindset, of course it is. I think I've worked with a whole range of people at different levels of a business. You get people that are junior who are not open, and you get people that are closed. Just they just have a very, very kind of I don't know, a very specific way of thinking, and it's what they've learned. Maybe it goes back to kind of, I don't know, the great bit, what got you here won't get you there. Some people believe what they've done all those years to get them to that position, they'll just consistently keep doing them, you know, and they don't want to change. And so one of the things that I've always, I think one of the first impressions I always have of somebody quite quickly, and now that you sort of mention it, is how open is somebody, or how closed is somebody when you first engage with them in a conversation, because that tells you a lot about where that conversation, that relationship's going to go.
So let's go into that. What do you mean? How open someone is? What, like body language or tone of voice? Or
I think it's tone of voice,
or
body language. When you say something, you get immediately shut down. You know, I love new things. I like new ideas, new concepts, new training regimes. And we're chatting about this. I like trying new things. So I'm always open. Like, generally, I'm pretty open to anything new. I'll look at it. I'll speak to people. I'll take different opinions. I'll research it, and then I'll make a decision. Some people are very much no.
So on that, so you essentially at this, just before you got to Nokia, you switched from being sales side to buying side, pretty much, as in marketing.
Yeah, exactly, correct. Yeah.
And so it's like, and I've been on the sales side, I guess, for pretty much mostly all of my career. Yeah. And it's one thing walking into a meeting going, do you know what? I've got just the thing for you. This like, generally you believe that. You know that you've done your own research, you've worked out what it is, and you've got, look, this could really move the needle for you. And they've gone, and you'd have felt that burn. You know what it's like when someone says no, and you're like, But then, what changed when you went to buy inside? Like, because you must have had people like me coming into the room going, you should go for this. Like, what changes? Like, how do you deal with that?
It's funny you bring that up. So I'd never been in that. So it was the moment where I think the sales guys latched onto the fact that here's a guy that's got ideas that can help me sell more product. And so I remember at Open Text and kind of feeling like they were dragging, you know, it was great because actually you learn, you know, it's the idea you can out and showcase what you can, your talents, and actually it's helping the sales force achieve what they're trying to get to, but actually trying to help the company, you know, more broadly achieve their goals. But I think when you sort of realise the mindset's different a little bit in terms of what's the end goal, what you're trying to achieve. What was the question again?
And like, because you switched from a selling mindset to a buying mindset. So what was that like? How did you cope with that? Like, did you want to say yes to everything, or were you super cautious?
I think, one of the things I think one of your questions that you were asking is what have I changed. I think I'm pretty open to saying yes. Something I've had to become a lot better at saying no. I don't know what, I'm very, somebody asks me to do something, I'll always, you know, changes obviously now with family and as time becomes restricted, but I always try and find time or help. So yes becomes sort of the default answer. So
yeah, let's go at that question. So in the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to in a work context?
It's funny you said at the start. Do you know what you said at the start of the podcast? That you didn't realise how far my career had gone because I'm always at conferences. So the thing that I really said a lot more, I mean that back then mainly because I just love soaking up knowledge and meeting and networking. But now I'd say no to probably 80% of things I'm invited to, and I specifically will choose the ones that I feel are valuable, not only for me but, you know, for wherever I'm going, and handpick those. So
do you mean speaking or just attending?
I think it's both. I think speaking, I still love to speak at events, and I'll look at it, but as you can imagine, you get a lot, so I had to be really disciplined in that. And the other thing is just attending them, but it's also attending tech conferences and digital marketing conferences. I've actually tried to go to things more around sport, healthcare, science.
Right.
Like, I've tried to broaden, because you know what it's like. You see the same people talking about the same stuff, and it becomes a little bit.
I think there's two types of conferences. The first conference is where you and I would run into each other, or you know, someone else, our peers, and you say, oh, have you learned anything today? Everyone goes, nah, not really. That's the first type of conference. The second type of conference is where you walk around going, fucking hell, Jesus, this is amazing.
This is mental. And it's those ones that I'll try and identify and go to if I can.
But you have to. I think you have to go off piste. You have to go.
That's
and
what
find
I try
something.
New things.
And I think the best kind of compromise of the two is probably something by Southwest. Because you can go super niche in the industry, but you can also go off
music and movie and stuff. Yeah, I totally agree. And the merging of those is brilliant as well. I think I agree. I think that's one of the best.
So you become really good at saying no to doing that kind of stuff. So what are the other behaviours or habits that you've changed in the last 5 years that have made a really big difference to your work life?
I think as anyone who knows and probably seen my journey over the past 5 years, it's probably been around my health, fitness, mentality. And
so what did you change from? Were you like unhealthy, tab smoking, lager drinking, lout, and you now
pretty much
superhuman Avenger type? Right.
Yeah. Probably not so louty, but I think I was I had my moments.
In a Nokia sense.
I went from, I think like we all do, maybe it was just me. I went from being healthy, rugby playing, super fit, gym every day, to then married, children, travelling the world, big job, lots going on, eating nice dinners, getting invited to lots of conferences and events, and not making the right decisions, not sleeping very well, all that stuff, and that doesn't really go well when you're trying to hold up jobs, wife, family, and something's going to give, right? And so for me, actually, there was a moment which I felt like it was actually the moment I gave up. I gave up caffeine was the first thing. Strangely enough, it was one of the first things I did. I gave up. Coffee.
And that's totally
I haven't drank coffee now in I think 3 or 4 years. I haven't had coffee.
Brilliant.
Well, I only gave it up because it was a friend of mine, Toby, who's the founder of Social Media Week, Toby Daniels.
Right.
Social Media Week.
Toby. Yeah.
So me and Toby were in Vegas and we had a hangover one day, and we'd been at a conference, and CES I think. We were there and we were sitting there at the bar. And we had a drink, we were going, right, that's the last drink for 3 months, and then we had a coffee and told me, let's give up coffee for 3 months. I was like, cool. Sugar, so let's give up sugar. So it was something like crazy. So we decided it was this crazy thing, like, let's see what we can do just to get... So it was obviously, it's the new year, right, so it's January, it's that kind of time.
Yeah, of course.
And so it's kind of like you sort of delay it to the end of CES. So we decided, and so obviously at some point I was going to have a beer, so I had a beer. At some point I was going to have sugar and had some sweets, and then at one point I had a coffee and realised, oh my god, I had I had an anxiety kind of panic attack after having this
after
coffee.
the 3 months.
Yeah, it was probably less than that, but it was this.
It was the time.
It was like I realised I was sitting with my wife and we'd just been at Costa, and I haven't had a coffee in months, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I didn't like the feeling.
Yeah,
and so I just decided and I by the way, I'd felt great up to then. And I've been doing workouts, sleeping better, healthier mindset, making better food decisions, smarter decisions around nutrition. So I was just relearning everything I sort of thought I knew, and started to make small steps towards just being a better all-round person in terms of health and nutrition.
Because I've been on a similar-ish journey, so I thought that dry January was always a ridiculous idea. I just thought, you're not going to feel that, but January you'll feel it, but you're not going to, it's not an ongoing practice. No, exactly. So I still do it. I do 10 days every month where I don't drink, I don't eat meat, and I don't drink caffeine. And the meat and booze thing is like, you feel better. Caffeine, you feel not 10 days, right? You feel 10% better. You
notice a big difference.
Oh my god, yeah, because you never.
So why do you go back to drinking it then? Because you really love it. I love the smell of it. I love the taste of it.
That's a really good question. I think as soon as, if I don't sleep well and I don't do yoga, exercise, whatever in the morning, and I stay up an hour later, then you start at kind of a slightly lower level, and you think, I'll have a cup of tea, and then it builds you back up. But I don't know. I feel terrible that we're having this conversation as two 40-year-old lads. It's going to be some 21-year-old going, get over yourselves.
Exactly,
anyway,
I know.
So the radical question. So
that 21-year-old should go back and look at what we were like when they're age.
Well, exactly. That's true. Yeah, we're far cooler than them.
We'll show them.
It was the 90s one. What can I say?
Come on.
So
Blur.
Teenage Fan Club?
Not so much.
Oh, mate, you're Scottish, you missed out.
Charlatans, yes.
Charlatans, right. This different podcast, right. If you had a digital media budget of 10 million quid to get any message out there, professional, personal, charlatans-based, food-based, exercise-based, what would it be?
I have, you know, Tom, I've been thinking about this one quite deeply.
Come on,
No,
tell me. Good.
I've been in so many different directions because, strangely, it was the one question I was thinking about that really got me stumped.
Well, tell me. You don't have to commit. Tell me what your options were. Tell me your thought.
Okay, I'll give you my thought process. So I thought, well, that's easy and I've listened to your podcast and I've thought, well, I've got to have a better one than that. And then I went and really started thinking about it, and I was struggling, and so. It took a bit of time. So every day I was thinking, right, what do I really care about? What am I passionate about? And there were several things I was thinking about. Obviously, the big thing about plastics in the ocean, which is a big thing, right? But then I use a lot of plastics, and I haven't really committed to giving up more. So I need to. So I thought it can't be that. Then I thought about health, nutrition, but then I was like, everyone's doing that at the moment. And so I've been on 3 or 4 recent trips on the plane. So I've been to Finland, I've been to Geneva, I've had a few other. I was at New York for picking up an award.
Clown.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in.
What was the award for?
The Internationalist, the marketing part of 1,000 internationalist marketing people changing the world.
Top one. Wow.
1,000. Yeah.
You top 1,000, mate. Well done. Anyway, get on with the question. You've had your plug.
So I thought about it deeply, and then it just hit me. I want to put every single bit of that money, that budget, into a message and a behaviour to change people's attitudes and behaviours and manners on planes.
What? Right, come on, let's hear it.
I don't know. Right, you must have had it. What is it with people? They go through some kind of change as they enter the airport, they enter the departure lounge, and they walk on a plane. They lose all manners, all sense of other human contact. They turn into absolute machines, monsters, throwing the luggage around.
Do you?
Bump it. Well, this is the thing. I thought, no.
You're a good traveller.
Consider
a traveller.
It's funny. And
in first class with your award.
No, yeah. I do a lot of coach travel. I do a lot more now. I do a lot of... But I just think there's an element of, you're on a plane, everyone's going the same place. Everyone's got to put the luggage up. Everyone's got a seat allocated. There's just an element of... I mean, it's not so much, okay, the British Airways, there's sort of the BA crowd, the Virgin, I'm sure, they're generally a bit better behaved. But when you go on EasyJet, or you go on these kind of like low fare airlines, people change. They literally change. I mean, obviously, I don't know if anyone can see, obviously not in the podcast, but I've damaged my wrist quite badly. And I was travelling with one hand. And I've been on planes loads of times, seen people, and I've like, can I help you? Not one person. And I was actually picking it up, and I actually had it on one shoulder, my right shoulder, pushing it in, and everyone just stood there and was like, "Excuse me, can you hurry up?" It was honestly.
So what would your message be? So I hear you. I think
I would launch a campaign to make people aware.
You do a campaign.
I would do it.
You're the first person to think about it as a media.
I'd do a campaign.
How long would this campaign be?
As long as it takes. It's an always on campaign. I would use AI to do some really clever advertising and see what works best. But no, what I think the point was, I think it's amazing how people change so quickly when they're in stressful situations, and you just see it on on flights and stuff. And it's funny, I mean, I travel with my family and my kids, and and everyone's got kids, and they're trying to get on the seat, and and it's always that thing where you want to get your luggage up there, right? And everyone's panicking, they're not going to have space to get their luggage up, but everyone always gets it up there. Everyone gets it done. Everyone gets to the location, they get off.
So what's the message? So it's a campaign.
It's a campaign to make people aware of the fact that all the best manners and best behaviours and other human beings around you, just be nice, just help out, just be patient.
It's a very it's a Christian message, isn't it?
Well, I know. I'm not a religious person at all, but it's the one area where I just think I sit on planes and I watch people and I'm like, You can tell that person is not like that. You probably get them outside and they're really nice and they'd help you. It's just when they come into an airport, there's a stressful situation happens in that departure lounge. As soon as they get on that plane, something changes. And I want to know what it is. I would actually use some of the budget to do some research and analysis and get some data.
Yeah, all right. Let's go into some detail on this. Yeah. What would be your research and analysis?
So I would get some studies done on. I'd get them all wired up.
Right.
Heart rate monitors,
stuff.
biometrics.
Okay, yeah.
See what happens.
Emotion tracking.
What's true? I even as I travel a lot, and you get a little. There's always a little bit of anxiety about getting in an airport, going through, getting on a plane. You always have a little bit. You probably don't notice it as much, but I'm sure some people really feel it.
Well,
I don't know. Let the data tell the story.
Well, it's a journey of absolutes, isn't it? Like if you haven't got your boarding pass, you ain't getting through that first gate. And if you and then you put in your whatever and like
your luggage,
you got to take your belt off and all that. Like
there's that whole starting process.
It's like a really shit computer game, isn't it? You've got to there's an underlevel boss and you go up and then you have some terrible food and by the time you get on and
you've got to run to catch the plane because you've got the wrong boarding gate.
Yeah, it's like gamification done really badly.
Yeah.
So what would be the central message? Have you got like a line? Be nice to people on planes. Be a considerate traveller.
Yeah. One of my friends was like,
do you need an agency to come up
with I need a line, Tom, is what I'm asking. I haven't solved what. All I know is it'd be amazing to analyse. Actually, do you know what I'm thinking? I might look into this. I might actually look into doing some research on travellers in terms of their behaviours, how they think, how they receive advertising, how they buy products, what that emotional sense through the airport does to them. Because people, by the way, spend supposedly. Well, I used to work at BA. I don't know. I just know that people spend a lot. They're in a different heightened state of feeling, and they tend to spend more money. They buy more. They're more. They purchase more. They spend more money in airports than they would maybe normally.
It's a fascinating retail world, isn't it? Because I never, at any point in my life, think, do you know what I need? Is like a really expensive bottle of brandy. Like never.
At no point.
And then for some reason in that scenario,
have you bought a couple?
That's 26 years old, and it's
have you done it?
Have a fuck, Jesus Christ! I just want to sit down and eat food.
No, but I have to pull myself away because I do. I'm like, oh. I want that bottle of really the expensive scotch that is limited edition.
So
anyway, yeah.
So you would kind of willingly, obviously within the bounds of the law, track people's data to understand their emotional state and how they feel about the people around them and the products that they're buying.
And why they turn into complete pricks on planes.
And so staying on the data thing, that is in fact your shiny new object, which is personal data.
We just undercovered that.
You see what I did there? That's good, wasn't it? It's like, so we were talking about, GDPR is kicking in next week, is it? Or the week? I don't know when this is going to go live.
Is that what that GDPR thing's all about? I haven't heard. I keep seeing it popping up every so often.
I thought it was a band initially, but no. So personal data could not be more of a new shiny object, and obviously with Cambridge Analytica. So why is it your shiny new object? Why are you buzzed up about the future of people's personal data?
I mean, I suppose actually, it's quite an exciting and I think interesting area for the future. I don't think it's a new concept, right? I think for a long time, I know for years we've spoken at many companies about the idea of why do people not own their own information? Like people own their own copyright, their own image rights. Why do we not have more ownership of our own data? And I think it's because people haven't really cared. There's not been a real appetite to know. I think people haven't really understood. I suppose apart from us in the industry who understand the value of that information and that data, it's not been really exposed to the general public. And so I think, as you said recently with Facebook, with Cambridge Analytica, I think GDPR to an essence, I think there's a multiple sort of things happening in the industry. There's certain moments that are happening that start, and I think I've always, if you look back in history, if you look at these moments, they start to shape where the future is going to go. I mean, we don't know, exactly how it will play out, but I do think there's going to be a much higher awareness, and also the millennial, or the younger, the youth, and whatever you call them these days, but the millennials, it's still
Gen Z coming through.
Gen Z. So these kind of the young one, they absolutely understand the use of their data. They know the use, they know how it's been used, they understand the value of it, and so I think at the moment we're going to go through an interesting few years, maybe 5-10 years or whatever, maybe longer, but how do we take back control of the information that we own, which is ultimately our, what's the question? Is it our IP? Is it our information? Should we own it? Should we have control of it? And so if you think about, I can't remember, there's been a few different initiatives over the years that I've seen, you might remember a couple, but where the idea is, you have your own wallet, which is your own data wallet, and I'll happily exchange that with any company or any brand, that I want to engage with. I'm more than happy to share that information in exchange for some kind of benefit. But the idea of a third-party broker being able to pull all that information together and broker those relationships without my involvement in that is obviously something we've done in digital marketing. It's something we do. It's how it works, and I understand that journey. I just feel like, I think it's, is it right or is it wrong? Is it where it needs to go? I don't know, but I get the sense that that's where things are headed. Now, I think interesting with the big, you got Amazon and probably taking Apple to one side, you got Amazon, Google, Facebook. I think it's going to be really interesting to understand what their moves are over the next few years in terms of people's data and privacy, because it's so inherent to their products and their development of technology that people love, but it's also being constantly kind of attacked in terms of, where do the lines between, what they own about us, what they know about us, and what that privacy means. I mean, some people argue in the industry, right, you've probably heard it, that people are willing to give up that right for value-added service, for technology innovation that helps them in their life. It gives them more benefit. But I don't know if that's so dry cut. I think there's definitely going to be sort of a bit of an information data revolution in some sense. I mean, it might not be massive. I think it's going to happen in waves, and it's going to be little things that will happen, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
So I'm going to make a link between two things that you might think is nonsense, but if you think about people's right to vote, right, your right to vote is very important.
Yeah.
Most important thing you'll ever do every 4 years, or however long it is.
Yeah, people died for the vote.
To vote, right. So, we had a really great turnout the last general election, right?
Huge, yeah.
But, what was it, 60%?
Yeah, 66, over that.
AKA just over half.
Yeah,
right?
which is...
But it's very difficult to articulate to the population who are eligible to vote that it's important, because it's intangible, right? You think, if I vote or I don't vote, what difference is it going to make, right? So I think there's a similar problem with data, right? I've got a really good understanding of what my data is and all the different thousands of places it's being used, and I can kind of visualise it, but I'm in that space. It's kind of my job. But what chance has my nephew, my niece, whoever it is, that are just a user of things like Google, Facebook, to even have the faintest idea what it really means to share their data? Not that they're not intelligent or couldn't understand it, but it's an abstract concept for me, and that's my industry.
Far as you mean, it's like the idea of the benefit of the
cost,
or the cost,
more importantly. So, like, we see something like Cambridge Analytica, but that's going to die down. And that was a big story, but
and what's really
So my question. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. I apologise. My question is:
what's going to drive force behind it?
Yeah, how's it really going to change behaviour in something that is so intangible?
So I think there's a whole number of elements. It's not one thing. I think there is an element of people are now more aware of the value that their data is. So I think there's one which they probably didn't have. So that's one element. Two, there's the technology in terms of things. I think, I'm sure you've covered blockchain numerous times in the podcast, but blockchain and what that sort of distributed ledger, that idea of being able to use the blockchain as a technology, an underlying technology to enable this, hasn't really existed before in the same sense. So I think there's that element. I think there's the fact that, there's a lot. there's a lot of benefit. You know, if we think about cryptocurrencies and we think about things changing, also think about just things like jobs and value. You know, where are people? If you think, I mean, one of the things the things I get more into recently in the last few years was Instagram. And I just think it's amazing to watch people and how young people creating amazing content are becoming huge influencers. Now they're obviously making the money through advertising or paid content stuff, but actually their data and the information they have and the value that they can bring starts to ask the question, well, how come I'm not monetizing this a little bit better? It's not much different, to be honest, from musicians. So for musicians who are creating music and putting it on Spotify and feeling that they're getting, you know, a really, really small amount of value back, but at least if you add it up, they're getting something back from it. So I think there's an element of lots and lots of different things come together. The technology, I think the attitude towards it, I think government regulation, I think it's going to be quite interesting. Probably not in the US, but I definitely think probably in other countries. There's going to be a lot more attention to it. I think also there's going to be a lot of I think there's going to be some interesting startups over the next few years that are going to make a big play in this area, who are going to draw attention to it. They're going to use the $10 million to draw attention to the fact that your data is worth money. We have technology that can enable that, and so I think there's going to be a lot of. I mean, I've already heard of quite a few. Probably they're not announced yet, but I've heard of quite a few technology. You know, in this well-backed, highly backed companies with very, very good people involved who are looking in at this space at the moment and thinking this is kind of an interesting area for disruption.
So if you were a marketing person listening to this podcast and they were thinking, right, okay, how do I take advantage of the change in society's view of data to do a better job as a marketer, what would you suggest that they do?
Well, it's a great one. It's one of so it's funny. It was to the point about young people coming into the industry as well. Now I'm torn with this because I've been involved in the industry for a long time and I understand it, but there's an element where, you know, admittedly I've even been there and myself. We've got so caught up in the fact that we focus on the technology, the amount of platforms, data systems, CMS, CRM platforms. It's like there's an obsession with building tech stacks. There's then a huge obsession with data and numbers, and what we've became is kind of we've disconnected with the human element of marketing, or the human connection with, you know, the person. And so for me, a lot of, you know, thinking about experiences, thinking about, go back to what I was saying about the airport and how people change, thinking about how these are human beings that we're engaging with. These are people. How are we creating the best experience, the best product? How are we creating the best brand for that specific human being? Therefore, think about them as, and I'm not talking about personas and you know, creating all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about actually starting to understand people as kind of emotional beings, rather than just clicks, rather than just impressions, engagements. And I know it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but how do you do that when it's all about a numbers game, it's a data game? But that's the point. It's became a numbers and a data game, and that's been a rush to implement more technologies, take more data, use it, advertise, market, generate clicks, click farms, click fraud, ad fraud, media. You know, all of this is built upon a kind of hype around, you know, how are we going to get more people to engage with more content when there's more devices and less attention. It's became a bit of a race to the bottom, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. You know, I mean, I'll admit, I still have a Facebook account, but honestly, every time I load up my Facebook feed, I want to pull my hair out. It's just the noise, the stuff, It just feels like, I don't know, it's just not a nice experience. I don't know, I'd love to just know how stressed people get just scanning their Facebook feeds, or how. So I tend to think, and Twitter's obviously got, you know, a big challenge in terms of just the negativity and stuff like that. So I'm interested in how technology and humanity and society, and I think, you know, people, what's the, you know, you know, and this is something I'm in a fight with a little bit in the last few months. I've been thinking a lot about technology. I've been trying to take a little bit more time off it. I've been trying to read more, do more stuff with my kids. I've been trying to remove them from the, you know, the Xbox, and try to think about, you know, people and just hanging out and just chilling and just not having your phones in the way.
I think that's a really interesting point to finish on, and just to kind of recap on like I knew so little of this stuff, but I just want to capture some of it. So, you know, you started as a copy boy at the Daily Record, and then you started falling in love with digital and how you could make stuff and publish stuff instantly. You really took me back to some things I'd totally forgotten about, like Quark Express, and the fact that you like me, you got turned on by technology and realised that traditional journalism or publishing, whatever, wasn't enough. You studied multimedia at uni, and you made your own Godfather tribute CD-ROMs and websites, which is hilarious.
Send you a copy, Tom.
And do send me a copy. I'll put it up with the post. And you set up your own sort of website agency and moved to Rent-A-Kill, STA Travel. You're a global webmaster. This is incredible stuff. And then you started to talk a bit more philosophically, which was interesting to me. You said things like, you're more capable than you think you are, and I think that's a really important message to all of us, really, different positions. You know, you may not be paid to be a certain person, but you can definitely do the job of that person. And how you learned how to build relationships at all levels, and then you were put in a kind of sales context, get in front of CMOs, and we didn't get onto the Nokia Microsoft story, unfortunately, but it was so interesting to hear about you giving up kind of caffeine and your big thing is about changing people's behaviour, and you see in a kind of tight, close-knit world of a plane, people aren't considerate enough of each other. And then I pushed you on to talking about your shiny new object, which is personal data, and why shouldn't people own their own data. But I think it's really interesting. I've never heard anyone say this before, but your own data is your own intellectual property. That's a really powerful statement. And in this world,
or is it? I don't know. I mean, that's the question.
I never really thought of it. And in this world where we've become sort of disconnected, when thinking about personal data as a marketer, it's important that we understand that we're talking to humans and emotional beings and not just driving clicks. Craig Hepburn, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
Fantastic.
It's been a pleasure. Loved it.